Why did you choose Merkel cell carcinoma other than a more common and better known cancer such as melanoma?
Yeah, that's a good question. Merkel, as I mentioned, is a very aggressive form of skin cancer, and it metastasizes very quickly. And unlike melanoma, it's uniformly fatal. Now, checkpoint inhibitors like Keytruda have clearly revolutionized how that disease gets treated. But the problem is, half of those patients don't respond to Keytruda, and when they don't respond, there's no alternative therapy, no standard of care. It's usually clinical trials with investigational agents. So that population of patients represents an unmet medical need. And so we studied whether or not IFX can allow patients who are failing Keytruda in the frontline standard of care for that disease, and can we re-challenge them with Keytruda and allow them to have a response. And so that is the perfect setting to have a discussion with the FDA, who have these pathways, in this case, an accelerated approval pathway, where we can examine IFX in a single trial with Keytruda versus Keytruda alone and see whether or not we can increase the response rate in a patient group that, quite frankly, if they don't respond, have no alternative treatments. And so that's the goal of the therapy that allows us to do potentially just one trial with an endpoint that has a very quick readout. I mean, the whole concept why the FDA came up with accelerated approval is to get an answer quickly with an endpoint, in this case, response rate, which they consider an endpoint that's a surrogate of clinical benefit, but it gets you approved typically within 6 months of finishing your trial. And so if we start that trial next quarter, we finish it approximately a year later. By the second half of 2026, you can have an answer. And if it's positive, the drug can be approved and available to patients as early as the first half of 27.
So, Jim, we've talked about Merkel cell carcinoma as being your lead indication. Um, what do we need to get done before we start the trial? I think we're gonna anticipate beginning it in the next few months. But have we identified sites? Have we identified pr- uh, pr- um, investigators? What do we need to get done, and what's left to do?
Sure. So, John, because this is a potential registration trial, meaning a phase three study that can be the basis for the approval of the product, the type of material that you use in those studies has to be done under very stringent manufacturing conditions called CGMP. So, that was the first thing that we needed to complete. We needed to complete the production of at least one lot of GMP material to start that trial. We have now done that. That information has gone into the FDA, and that should allow us to start up the study sometime in mid-second quarter. The next thing that we do are what are termed site initiation visits. So we'll have about 22, 25 clinical sites in the United States, and the objective is to get as many of those sites initiated, i.e. screening patients, so that when product is available in May, June timeframe, they actually can start putting the patients on the study and work towards our goal of enrolling about 118 patients over the next 12 months. So that is essentially how these studies start up. We would expect all 22 sites to be up and enrolling by the third quarter, late third quarter this year, which would help us meet our target of 118 patients completely enrolled by mid 2026.